Good afternoon. Your meeting is now live.
Thank you very much indeed. Good afternoon. My name is Councillor Darren Sanders. I'm the Cabinet Member for Housing and Preventing Homelessness. The Cabinet has asked me to chair this virtual meeting in the Cabinet due to the illness of Councillor Gerald Vernon Jackson, the Leader of the Council, and the fact that the Deputy Leader of the Council, Councillor Steve Pitt, is at a medical appointment. So we wish both of them well and a speedy effort and speedy recovery, and welcome to this virtual meeting of the Cabinet. Now, members of the public are invited to view this meeting, and there's been the opportunity for written representations to be submitted. Anna, who's our Democratic Services Officer, have any been received?
None to date, no, as far as we know.
Okay, that's fine. If they're received during the meeting, that will be mildly interesting. We're meeting virtually in response to the limitations placed on governance by the COVID-19 pandemic. For the purposes of this meeting, the City Solicitor has advised that pursuant to Section 78 of the Coronavirus Act 2020, this meeting will be run by reference to the model standing orders as set out in the Local Authorities open brackets coronavirus close brackets open brackets flexibility of local authority meetings close brackets regulations 2020 number 392 open brackets the regulations close brackets. Thank you. Members, please keep your cameras on throughout the meeting and only turn your microphones on when you speak. Officers, please keep your cameras off unless you are speaking. I understand we've received no deputation requests, so I will now ask people to introduce themselves, starting with my Cabinet colleagues. Councillor Horton.
Good afternoon. Susie Horton, Cabinet Member for Children, Families and Education.
Thank you, Susie. Councillor Ashmore.
Good afternoon. Dave Ashmore, Cabinet Member for Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you very much. Councillor Winnington.
Matthew Winnington, Cabinet Member for Health, Wellbeing and Social Care.
Thank you, Matthew. Councillor Hunt.
You're on mute, Councillor Hunt.
Happy New Year, everybody. So I'm the Cabinet Member for Community Safety, which is covers a lot of things. And I always take the opportunity to say I'm also a Nelson Ward councillor, because Nelson is, well, people don't know where Nelson is particularly, but it covers, and I like people to know, it covers Tipner, North End, Buckland and Stamshaw, because someone like Mass Ward, Eastern Cranes Ward just speaks for itself, Milton, Baffins and so on, but Nelson Ward, there you are. So it's Stamshaw, Buckland, North End and Tipner. End of the advert.
Thank you for the advert, Lee. I also say that I am a councillor for South Copner, Baffins and North Milton, in a ward that is called Baffins, which people in Milton and Copner never.
Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation.
Okay, that's excellent. I don't see any other Cabinet colleagues unless anybody wants to yell. No. We also have another councillor present who's not part of the Cabinet but is kindly watching this meeting. Councillor Udi, could you just say who you are just a tad?
Hi, my name's Claire. I'm a Capricorn. It's my birthday in a few weeks. Is that what the information that you wanted from me, Councillor?
Well, I was also going to say you're a councillor for Charles Dickens, which has got an even longer real title than Nelson has. And you're also, in your spare time, the leader of the Progressive Portsmouth People Group on the council. Have I got that right?
You've got it completely right. Well done. Thank you. I'm also chair of licence.
Thank you. I'm so glad there's another interest we're not declaring. That's superb. Thank you for that. Okay. What I'll do is officers, could you explain who you are to the public, please? So I'll start with Peter Smith Parkin. Peter clearly doesn't want to know. He's a Democratic Services person who's overseeing the video of this. Mr. Hill.
Yeah, good afternoon. James Hill, Director of Housing, Neighbourhood and Building Services.
Thank you very much. Ms. Martin.
Anna Martin, Local Democracy Officer, taking the minutes.
Lovely. Mr. Fielding?
Hello, Paul Fielding, Assistant Director for Housing.
Thank you. Mr. Waggett?
Good afternoon. I'm Andrew Waggett. I'm the Energy Services Team Manager in Housing, Neighbourhood and Buildings.
Thank you. Mr. Ward?
Chris Ward, Director of Finance and Resources.
Thank you. Ms. Miller?
Hello, Lydia Miller, Events Manager.
Thank you, Lydia. Mr. Hughes?
Good afternoon, Meredith Hughes, Assistant Director for Buildings in Housing, Neighbourhood and Buildings.
Thank you, Meredith. I've also got 4 other participants in this particular meeting, and I'm just checking who they are. Sorry, I forgot to introduce Councillor Mason. Hugh, could you just say who you are?
I'm Councillor Hugh Mason, Cabinet Member for Planning Policy, and I'm sorry I'm late.
No, that's absolutely fine. We haven't got to the apologies yet. So, Ms. Smith?
Thank you, Chair. Charlotte Smith, Assistant Director of Corporate Services.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Williams.
David Williams, Chief Executive.
Okay, thank you. Now the massed hordes know who we are. Just want to move to item 1 on the agenda, which is apologies for absence. Anna, who have we received apologies from?
Councillor Chris Atwell, and then there's Councillors Pitt and Bernard Jackson, which you've already mentioned.
Okay, thank you for that, Anna. Item number 2 is any declarations of interest. Do any Cabinet colleagues have anything interesting to declare as far as this meeting is concerned? No? Okay, I have, which is a personal but not prejudicial interest, in item 3, in that my mother is one of the people who was decanted from the tower blocks. She did, however, take no part in the consultation. So that's a personal but not a prejudicial interest, which means I can then take part in the discussion. And so on that basis, we move to item 3, which is the response to the Housing and Social Care Scrutiny Panel review into experiences gathered after the decant of residents from Leamington and Horatia houses. Mr. Fielding, do you wish to run us through this?
Yeah, good afternoon, Chair. Thank you. So this report is the response report to the work undertaken by the Housing and Social Care Scrutiny Panel, which was into reviewing how we decant properties, City Council properties when we need to do decants, and specifically focused on the decant of Leamington and Horatio towers, which happened into 2018 and into 2019. The report's reasonably short, so I'll run through it quite quickly. The recommendations from this report was that we thank the panel for their work, and that the Cabinet notes and supports the recommendations. So in terms of background, the Housing and Social Care Scrutiny Panel met in 2019, which seems like a long time ago now, between July and November 2019, to review the decants and as I've said, focus on Leamington and Horatia. The reason that obviously it's taken this long to come forward is, as you'll be aware, because of COVID, has lengthened the time for the panel to kind of pull together all the information, and the panel signed off their final reports November of last year, and so that's where it's coming here. The review, as is put in 3.2 of the report, had residents, so residents were invited to come in as well as doing a survey. We also had Hampshire Fire and Rescue and housing officers and various other officers from the council as outlined. The 4 recommendations from the Scrutiny Panel's report are outlined in section 4. So the first recommendation was to thank officers, and it should be said that has already happened. That happened a while ago, and a letter of thanks was provided to officers who were involved in the decant process. Second recommendation was to ensure that we learnt and we embedded the learning from that process, and that's happened. We had several learning processes from that, and things that we would enact for if those decant was to happen in the future. Recommendation 3 was altering slightly our voids process, which we have done. So since this work was undertaken, we've had an intervention into our voids process, and we now have a different process in how we deal with voids. So that recommendation is in there, and the recommendation 4 was that residents involved in any future decants are aware that there is one offer of alternative accommodation, and again that is also agreed. So that is the reports, quite short and sweet, and that's the end for me. Happy to take questions. I think
You're on mute.
Several people have been wanting to do that for years, I tell you. Councillor Mason. Hugh.
4.1.4, was any consideration given to whether just offering one alternative piece of accommodation was sensible, or whether they should have had at least some choice given to them?
Yeah, the panel did look into that and investigate how we offered properties for Leamington and Horatia. We always started off with saying that there was going to be one offer, but we were very careful to make sure we understood everyone's circumstances, so that the idea was that the offer that was given should have been met the needs of the people that we were offering to. So it wasn't as strict as the one offer. We were able to look at that if we needed to, but by understanding what people's needs were, then the offer that we gave was in the vast majority of cases was exactly what people were looking for.
Okay, Hugh, does that answer your question?
Yes, that's fine, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Does anyone else have any other questions before I sum up? No. Okay, thank you. This also falls within my...
I do,
Lee. I did not see you,
sorry,
Lee.
Emily. Happy New Year, everybody. And I hope everyone had a lovely Christmas apart from this rotten COVID. And it's my birthday today, so happy birthday to me, happy birthday to me, and happy birthday to Susie. It's hers today.
And thank you very much for that, Lee. Your question was happy birthday,
Listen,
is this right?
Yeah, I want to move now to something a bit more contentious, I suppose, and it's not necessarily a round report. And thank you very much, Paul, for giving the overview of the scrutiny committee. I just wondered, did we have any apologies from any opposition spokespeople or chairs of the scrutiny committee or whatever today? Anna?
Lee, that's thank you for that. That's not a question for Mr. Fielding, but
No,
Anna,
no, I'm asking Anna. Just asking, did we have any apologies apart from the ones I've heard about so far from any?
No, we haven't. No.
You know, so I'm going to not go off on one here now. We hear on social media so much about with rotten administration being not open and transparent and all this stuff. And I know there's hardly anybody watching, but I mean, I hope this gets back to the opposition spokespeople and the chair of the committee. You know, you've got plenty to say. They've got plenty to say on social media. But when it comes to the nitty gritty, the actual decision making, and when they complain about a lack of openness and transparency, where are they all the time? I hardly ever see them at these meetings. You know, so I just want to get that point on record. I've made my point. I could go on, but I won't go on. I think it's a very good report. I think what you're doing, Darren and Paul and all the team for these people is absolutely first rate and needs to be commended. So thank you, Paul, and all the people that work with you and work with Darren on this report and the other reports that we'll see later on. That's me done.
Right, apologies for that. On the benefits of living in a flat. I understand that there are now 11 people watching us, Lee.
Indeed. And I must say how exemplary of it is Councillor Udy attends so many meetings out of interest, probably. And if only all the other councillors were like it. If I was the opposition spokesperson, I'd be here all the time asking questions. But there we are.
Right. Well, thank you for that, Lee. And as the predecessor to Councillor Stubbs in terms of chairing this panel, I know I didn't make one report, which I apologised for, but I did make some others. I would say in my role as the portfolio holder, I support both recommendations, and I support the recommendations of the report. This was an incredibly difficult and potentially quite painful process, and I've seen in other authorities how it's all gone wrong, with people who didn't want to go, people who were worried, people who were scared, and we had plenty of people who were worried and scared. I was there when we were telling people that they had to move, which is an incredibly difficult experience, but we had to do it in order to put resident safety first. I think the learning points from the report are very good, and I'm delighted that they're being acted on. We have to learn. For one of these blocks, what I know as Solihull House, but was then called Horatia House, this was the second time in 13 years that people had to leave the block. Thankfully, different people had to leave the block. So it is an incredibly painful, incredibly difficult experience. I'm delighted that the responses have been so positive from people across the piece. You'll never get it right, and I'm delighted that we're able to learn, but I'm also delighted that this report is here. And I propose that Cabinet colleagues that we agree to the 2 officer recommendations that have been put forward in our briefing. Is everybody agreed with that?
Agreed.
Yes, agreed.
Okay, thank you for that. And Paul, thank you very much for that. And please thank all the staff for such a difficult experience. And I'm delighted it's the scrutiny panel worked so much in favour of it. Thank you very much. Okay, we now move to item 4, which is the Home Energy Support Service Programme. For people who weren't around in October, this is an update from a report on the subject that the Cabinet agreed in October. So this is purely just to update us. Mr. Waggett.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. As the Chair indicates, this is a report to update the Cabinet on the progress made since the October paper, and briefly, the Home Energy Support paper sets out a slight change to the energy services that we offer for domestic properties within the city. So, rather than, as the energy services team currently does, focus on entirely on fuel poverty mitigation, it looks to keep that fuel poverty cohort and those measures for the fuel poor households in the city, but also open up the energy support to the other 90% of households in the city, for those people who want to reduce their bills and reduce their carbon footprints within the households as well. So this paper, I suppose, in brief, reflects the progress that's been made over the past 3 months, but also tries to capture we'll call it dynamic nature of the last 3 months, but turbulent might also be a word. Dynamic in terms of there's been a lot more money that has flooded into the domestic energy space, but also the negative side of that, obviously, with increased increased COVID restrictions and what have you as well. So the paper outlines a number of recommendations that the Cabinet agrees that progress is being made in this area with renewable support and energy efficiency, and that it speaks to Portsmouth's climate emergency. That the Cabinet agrees to that where we've had initial installer engagement, that's reflected positively upon the ability for installers to ramp up this area and to create more green skills within the city. That the Cabinet agrees officers should continue to develop the business models outlined within the report and the services outlined within the report. That the Cabinet recognises the domestic energy efficiency sector has shifted somewhat, as I alluded to, over the course of the last 3 months, which has meant that some priorities have come forward and some other things have had to go a little bit onto the back burner. That the Cabinet agrees that the high-level communications strategy, combined with things like the solar model, which I'll articulate a little bit in a minute, are appropriate to engage all households in the city, and that there's a clear sort of tailored, bespoke message around every household and what the help that they can get. And that the Cabinet instructs officers to continue to explore the potential funding streams and grants and what have you as well. Finally, that the Cabinet instructs officers to continue to explore the council's ability to offer up low-cost loans within the for the provision of energy efficiency services domestically. If I may, I'll talk at a very high level about the sort of 4 core themes of the report and the 4 core services, obviously from which a lot of other services hang. But I suppose to break it down into 4 core services for reasons of brevity, the first of those 4 core services is advice, support, and communication. In this regard, we've changed a lot of the messaging within our website to retain the fuel poverty messaging, but also to take visitors, customers down a customer journey, which also speaks to unbiased advice around all technologies that might be retrofitted within a property. We've established a free phone number so that any household in the city who wants advice and support with energy domestically can call that number and get again sort of neutral advice around that. And then I suppose the final and the big piece, and again this is elucidated within the communications plan in Appendix B, is the switched on solar tool that we've developed over the course of the last 3 or 4 months to be a bespoke tool for any household in the city who wishes to see the solar potential of their roofs and take advice on that. They can punch their, at the point of launch, they'll be able to punch their address into a tool, and we really think that that's quite market leading in terms of what we've developed with a spin out from the University of Southampton there. The second key theme, I suppose, is household audits. I think that the COVID restrictions have meant that it's unlikely that we're going to do quite so many sort of blue sky audits, but what we have been able to secure is financing and funding to go and do kind of targeted approaches to those households. So we're going in, looking at a specific measure, but trying to identify all of the measures at the same time. We might be going in to do solid wall insulation, but we'll have a conversation with that household about solar on their roof, air source heat pump, etc. And a lot of that has been around this sort of data crunching and stuff, so we can offer targeted communications. Third in that list is the actual installation, the actual getting down to business of putting energy efficiency and renewable measures onto homes. And in this regard, we've recruited 3 at present. We're using PV as the first of the technologies that we're going to launch, but we've solar PV, I should say. We've recruited 4 local installers to date onto an approved trader list who will be able to give confidence to householders that they can go to that approved trader list with confidence that we've vetted that those tradesmen who sometimes I think have a little perhaps a hard time in terms of reputation. And we've had a very positive response from that installer market engagement as well. They've come back to us and they've said, look, we will develop teams in the Portsmouth area. We will train people up. We will help, and we will expand this space so that we can fill that gap, I suppose, if you like, of low carbon skills. And then the fourth and final area in terms of key themes is the financing of improvements. So that this is one of the big areas where things have shifted over the course of the last 3 months. And it's not been a lot of time, but in that time, £3 billion have flooded into this area, and probably another 500 million is going to come in once the Treasury deals with the Prime Minister's announcement from last month. And so we've actually focused on trying to secure grant funding first and foremost. And we've been successful in that. We've won our first £3 million through the Green Homes Grant Local Authority Delivery Scheme, and we're bidding for almost twice as much in the second round of that, which we'll hear about in the coming weeks. So we've got a big we've taken the opportunity to go after quite a big chunk of funding there in grant funding, whilst the opportunity avails itself. And so we've perhaps gone a little bit slower, and the report reflects that on some of the other things like low cost loans and those kind of items. And I think in a nutshell, that's kind of it. We've got there's some next steps in there. There's some ongoing recommendations and things, but that's pretty much where we are at this stage.
Andrew, thank you for that. Before I come to colleagues' comments, I forgot to allow one person to introduce themselves earlier on, who was Councillor Stagg. So, Lynn, if you could just explain who you are, that would be great.
I've already done it.
Have you? Excellent. Well, that cheers me up no end. That means my memory's going, which means it's a real worry, I tell you.
You're having senile dementia it makes me very happy compared to myself.
Thank you. I'm always grateful for that, Lynn. Thank you so much. So I have Mr. Ashmore. It's your portfolio. So, Dave.
Hello. Yeah, I can't really add much more onto what Andrew's explained there. It just seems a big raft of things there that are really positive and definitely the direction we need to go in. Our award-winning energy manager Andrew Waggett and our hard-working team that got an honourable mention at the Energy Awards as well, which proves just that how much of a kind of beacon they've been and a credit to the council they've been. And I'm really glad to see such positive stuff in there. Obviously, as environment portfolio, I'm glad to see things about the importance of renewable energy in there. I'm glad to see things that energy efficiency in there and how it's being rolled out, and the the scope and where to go, the targets on that. They're all really positive things, and they're so yeah, I'm really glad that that's come on there, and I'm glad that it mentions in the recommendations that these are significant things that we've already done and significant things that we're trying to roll out there, because obviously trying to get to net carbon neutral there, these are exactly the things we need to be doing. And I'm glad that things like fuel poverty as well has been mentioned. But obviously this isn't just for fuel poverty house, this is for everyone, the whole gamut. So if we're going to hit that net carbon neutral target, it needs to be a wholesale thing there. So no, really positive work there. I just really wanted to thank you publicly for it.
Thank you for that, Dave. Just to say, the awards Dave was referring to is that Andrew was the Public Sector Energy Manager of the Year at the Energy Managers Association, so they may know what they're talking about. And the team was also commended for its work in the public sector approach, so I think that means they're quite reasonable. I have Lee, Lynn, and Hugh, and then I'll try and sum up. Lee?
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, this is an amazingly progressive council, working right across it. When we have people, and we're being pushed all the time, and I accept that from people like Friends of the Earth and Extinction Rebellion. So hats off to them for constantly pushing us too. But also hats off to us, everybody, and all the officers responding to this climate emergency, for appointing climate emergency officers, plural, and for appointing David to focus on what we know is a really important matter. But even before that, the council and the council officers were winning awards for what we were doing around solar energy and around the LED lights that have been installed across the city, which I think 3 years ago saved us £400,000 or thereabouts. So if it was 3 years ago, everybody, that's 3 times 4 at least. That's £1.2 million, which is equal to about 2% on the council tax. Now, these are very big numbers, and it's one of the reasons I think that this revolution around the green industries, which we heard from Andrew just now, is creating new jobs in the city too. He mentioned a number of jobs earlier on, and employing local people in what we want to do. And at point 7, that the Cabinet instructs officers to continue to explore the council's ability to help people to want to put solar panels onto their roofs and so on. So we're turning Portsmouth into a massive solar farm, and this is tremendous stuff. It's really, really good stuff. And Portsmouth City Council is progressive in this. Portsmouth City Council is a leader, and we've got really talented officers taking us forward, but we've made it a political priority too. And so no doubt at all in my mind that the absence of opposition spokespeople here today means that they absolutely agree with us. But it would be nice, wouldn't it, if these people, these councillors who are paid good money by council taxpayers, would actually show up and come and support this good work of our officer teams and what the council is doing, and to talk about it instead of continually sniping, saying what a terrible job is being done, because a darn good job is being done by a whole lot of very good and talented people. So well done, everybody. Well done, Portsmouth City Council. Well done, Andrew and his team, and particularly well done to Dave Ashmore, who is just amazing in this role. And if the news is listening, that's a good quote.
Thank you for that, Lee. I have no idea who is listening. So, Lynn.
I've got to laugh at you, Lee. But many congratulations, Andrew, and the team, because I think this is absolutely phenomenal. It's brilliant. But I'd like to put a point in here. A lot of this work was started way before climate, Extinction Rebellion, etc. I know we're working on this way beforehand. It's great that you've got, there are groups like that who bring it to the general attention, but it's been going on in Portsmouth City Council for a long time. But that brings me to a bit of a worry I have, Andrew, and that is you are potentially likely to become victims of your own success. Now, are you going to have enough officers to keep this going? This is important because it is so good. It must continue.
Yeah, I think to respond to that, I think what the paper does is it sets out that rather than us, perhaps our in October we were thinking about a big bang that was going to happen, whereby we launched all of these things in one place and you know, all the different services at one time. What this paper speaks to is a much more modular approach to those launches and a much more graduated approach, so that we can, I suppose it de-risks us in every sense. It de-risks us from that flood of inquiries through the door that we can't deal with in a sort of professional manner. But it also de-risks us from the point of view of cost up front that we might not be able to return on this as well.
Thank you. Yes, that's good, and I think it's important that is stressed here, sort of publicly, so that the general public. I know there may only be 11 people watching, but I think this message needs to go out. You know, that people can't just keep contacting councillors and officers all the time, because that actually disrupts the work that you're trying to do. So it's very important that the message gets out that you have got things in place. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Lynn. Hugh?
Firstly, also congratulations on the achievement. And two specific questions. Can you say a little more about the Environment Centre, the charity which you're using to give advice? Who are they? What are their competence? And things of this sort. And secondly, you have concentrated greatly on photovoltaics. Air source heating, other alternative sources of heating. Where are we in developing a strategy on those?
Yeah, sure. So the Environment Centre are a charity that have been running they're based in Southampton, and they've been running for at least the last 10 years in this space. And I wouldn't be able to put an absolute time limit on it, but they've been running for a long period of time, and in that time they've delivered not so much in Portsmouth, but a lot of work for Southampton City Council and Hampshire County Council. So they initially, it's funny actually. They've been through a bit of a roller coaster in terms of initially they were set up to talk about the environment and report to the environment a lot, and then that sort of went off the political agenda a little bit. So they ended up doing a lot of work on fuel poverty mitigation with us and fuel poverty mitigation with the wider Hampshire area. And actually, the resurgence of the groups that we've mentioned, like Friends of the Earth and Extinction Rebellion, have actually shifted that political landscape a little, or that landscape, I suppose, in terms of the advice that people want, again, into a kind of more generic sort of environmental advice, and not focused on fuel poverty a little bit in the same ways we're launching the service actually. So they've got a call centre there who are all very well trained staff who teach us a thing or two very often in terms of the advice and support that we give out as well. And they've been appointed on the basis of grant funding that we won. It was probably about this time last year. We won just over £150,000 worth of grant funding under something called the Energy Redress Fund, and that's helped us to establish that relationship with the Environment Centre ourselves. You're absolutely right. So I'm underneath it all. Although I advocate solar a lot, I am a sort of a good energy manager at heart, and somewhere in there, I understand the challenges of reducing heat demand, in particular through fabric efficiency, and also through low carbon heating sources. We've picked on solar. Primarily because we think that's a good service to launch with. We've got a very big flagship tool in terms of the switched on solar tool, but we anticipate that we will launch an approved trader list and a route, a customer journey through to solid wall insulation in particular, which is a very hard measure to treat, and it really needs looking, and also air source heat in due course as well. And actually the funding that we won under LADS 1A, which is technically the £3 million that we won back in about October time, that funding is there and it will help to treat households with grant funding. But what we're also gearing up to do is to get an approved trader list together so that those households that don't qualify for reasons of qualifying criteria, they will also be able to seek advice and help from us initially through the audit process, but also that we can then refer them on to competent installers so that they can get the work delivered for them. So we've got insulation and air source heat pumps at the moment are kind of vying for our attention in terms of the next cab off the rank, if you like, for the approved trader list. So we expect them to come forward a number of months, basically a couple of months after the point where we launched the solar one. And again, the modular approach, as I mentioned, the Council of Stack sort of gives us the ability that if the solar is some sort of huge success and we get lots and lots of different people, it might actually staggering the launch of those services can be tailored according to demand effectively. I hope that makes sense. I've rambled there a little.
It does. Thanks. Darren, you're muted.
My apologies for that. Too many people want me today. Right, thank you. We have a late attendance from the city solicitor. Mr. Balfe, could you just say who you are, please?
Hello, Darren. Happy New Year to one and all. My name is Peter Balfe and I'm the city solicitor.
Thank you very much, Peter, and I said apologies for that. Peter, I've been asked to chair this meeting at the last minute, so forgive me if I'm in and out. So thank you very much. I have a question for Andrew, and then I want to try and sum up. So Andrew, obviously we're now likely to have a lockdown for the next 3 months, and I think we've got to assume that. How flexible is this plan in connection with all that? I mean, or is it just something that we don't know and we're going to have to wait for government to sort of give us puffs of smoke on?
It's a bit of both. I think we can anticipate, knowing what we know, what the likelihood of people taking this up on services like coming into a house and doing a blue sky audit are. And I think that, we probably park that service for the course of the next 3 months. But what we do instead is shift our approach to doing a lot more data management, and also to getting things like the solar tool launched, even if there is a lockdown during that period of time, because a lot of that work under the with the solar tool is done effectively remotely. It's done mapping using LiDAR and Google Earth, effectively mapping roofs. So that piece of work can be done. And again, it's kind of why we've designed this in this sort of modular way, so that we can turn things up, turn things down. We expect that the solar thing will be the solar tool and the solar service as a wider. We're calling it switched on solar, just to try and mimic the branding that we've got for the rest of the thing. But the point where we push that forward, we'll be able to deliver that. There's a question about perhaps some of those other things like blue sky audits and those sorts of things.
Okay, thank you for that, Andrew. So thank you very much for your comments and questions, colleagues. I'll just sum up, if I may. I think that whenever this lockdown, whenever we get out of the restrictions that we're in, and whenever we can get to back to something approaching normal, the way forwards for the city is to be kinder, fairer and greener. We've already seen one down payment on that, and that's the work to get 90% of the city's rough sleepers out of the streets and into safe and secure accommodation, something that has already changed lives. And to my mind, this is the second down payment on that particular future. The work that is being put forwards, which essentially is to offer people the chance to all people the chance to have solar panels on their roofs, running alongside the work that is being done on the sort of issues that Hugh was talking about in council buildings, and we hope in future developments as well, is a way of saying that we have to make our city greener. The climate emergency is too grave. The air is too dirty. The roads are too clogged. And everybody must play their part to try and make sure we have a greener future in this city. And this report goes a long, long way towards that by going beyond the excellent work that's being done on fuel poverty and allowing everyone the chance to take part and to do their bit is a fantastic thing. And it is fitting that Andrew's team, which is nationally recognised, is taking the lead not just in this city, but in the country as well. So, colleagues, Andrew, thank you very much for that. Meredith, thank you very much for that as Andrew's manager. I have various recommendations for item 4. I'm proposing that Cabinet accept all of them. Does Cabinet agree?
Yes.
That sounds suspiciously
Agreed.
like more than maybe, Andrew.
Agreed.
So please carry on. And I think we may want, I know if the leader were here, if Councillor Vernon Jackson were here, he would ask that we get regular reports on this. So I suspect we may be seeing an update report very, very soon. Possibly before the lockdown is over, who knows. But Andrew, thank you very much for that. And colleagues, thank you very much. Magnificent report from a magnificent group of people.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers. Okay, so we move to item 5 now, colleagues. Which is the Coronavirus Civic Awards. Now, I don't know whether Charlotte or Lydia lead on this or someone else is leading on this.
Hello, it's Lydia.
Hello, Lydia. Fire away.
Okay, so this report came about as a result of the notice of motion received at the July 2020 council meeting. So the report recommends that the annual Civic Awards that were agreed for the 2019-2020 period, we present at the February 2021 council meeting. Obviously, in reality, they'll be virtually presented. And then moving on to the 2020-2021 Civic Awards, it is recommended that the Civic Awards focus on local residents that have done something significant during the coronavirus pandemic, and that they are recognised. So the Civic Awards for 2021 only focus on the coronavirus, and that these will then be presented as part of the AGM in 2021. The 2.3, the third recommendation, is that the Cabinet agrees that at least one of the Coronavirus Civic Awards is given to a young person. So this replicates the regular annual Civic Awards, that whereby one is awarded to a younger person in the city. And then 2.4 recommends that the Cabinet agrees to the award criteria and the process that's detailed in the report. So just to summarise that, we're suggesting that we use local media, for instance, the news and probably a local radio station, to publicise the awards, and that local residents are encouraged to put forward people that they think have gone, above and beyond during the pandemic. Then, once nominated, they will be looked at by a group of people that are non-biased. They represent the whole community, and then a certain number are then awarded at the AGM in 2021. But we would look to recognise everyone that has been nominated with a letter and a certificate from the Lord Mayor, because obviously everyone's contribution has been significant in one way or another. We're recommending that whilst I don't think we should segregate the awards into specific categories, it's important that we recognise that there are not just individuals that have done significant things in the city. There are community groups, there are businesses, there are a whole variety of people that have done very good things, very good work, and that the panel tried to award a broad range of awards where possible. So the criteria itself kind of links to the regular annual awards, whereby people have done something significant in the city. They have a link to the city. They're potentially, a role model in their field or worthy of respect for their achievements. That there have been a significant number of people that have benefited either directly or indirectly by the nominee's contribution. And just how they've made a difference to someone or people's lives. And then to make them more specific to the coronavirus pandemic, we would look to make sure that the nominee has done something in addition to their regular day job. And then that they've done something like how they've maybe benefited or supported vulnerable members of society who have perhaps caught the virus, how they're perhaps providing care for patients, maybe they've developed an innovation to support the vulnerable or those with coronavirus. Perhaps they've gone to extraordinary lengths to keep their service going or to set up something new, for example, or perhaps they've been volunteering and that their support to those affected or to local residents is worthy of recognition. Obviously that changes slightly for a younger person because not necessarily would have been something as part of their work, but just that they can show that they're a role model for young people in the city, that they've real passion for the city, and that they're an active member of their community, and that they've done similar things as part of the virus, that they've maybe gone to extraordinary lengths to support people. They've perhaps provided care to patients. They've maybe developed innovations to support the vulnerable, or perhaps volunteered significantly. So that's a roundabout way of summarising the report. Any questions?
That's great. Thank you for that, Lydia. I have to say, as the person who proposed the motion that you referred to at the full council meeting, I'm delighted this is here. This is very, very good news. I've got Lee and then Matthew. Lee?
Yeah, hi Lydia, Happy New Year and all the kind of stuff. Yeah, another very good report. And thank you very much. I won't go on about opposition spoke to people not being here supporting this report. What I will say is that I attended an event recently. Sorry, Claire, I beg your pardon. Good for you being here. Good example. I attended the OPCC Officer of Police Crime Commissioner Awards just to the end, in the middle of December. And I think, I can't be certain who was it running, but I mean, it'd be worth contacting James Payne there, because what they did was tremendous. It involved everybody. It was very slick. I suspect it's probably an outside company that ran it. But even so, it made the awards for bravery and community awards. People have been helping the police all over the shop. So anyway, may I very respectfully suggest that you give them a tinkle and ask how they did it, because it was slick and it raised hairs on the back of my neck. And I think that's what we want to do. We want people to be proud of what everyone else did. It was a tremendous effort, and we may well have to go through it all yet again. So we may be visiting it again this time next year, but it was very good indeed. So thank you for all your efforts, and give them a tinkle at the Police Crime Commissioner's thing. And before I leave that, I would of course rather that money that funds the Crime Commission was spent on frontline policing, but there we are. They did make good use of it, and it was a very good event. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Lee. Lydia, that's a sensible suggestion from me to have a chat with the APCC crew?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, that's fine. I don't think we need to add it to the recommendations, but I think, Lee, that's a very, very good thing. I've got Matthew. Matt.
Thank you, and thank you, Lydia, for the reports, and thank you, Darren, for putting forward the motion at full council. It is absolutely right that we're doing this and really focusing this year's Civic Awards on the coronavirus response, the way that the city has come together on this, both groups and individuals, has been absolutely fantastic. There have been connections made and that have never been done before in the city, despite the best efforts in the past. But this has really focused things on the way that people work together, and people have been volunteering in the past that have never volunteered before. And I think everyone's really come together as a community in this city, which I think really shows the strength of community in the city, and the way that people really do look out for each other. Other councils in the country have wondered how we do it, and it's quite frankly, it's obvious for us in Portsmouth. It is the people of Portsmouth. The people of Portsmouth are unique in the country. The people of Portsmouth have their real sense of community, and the people of Portsmouth have done each other proud during the pandemic. So it is absolutely right what we're doing here. It's right that we have a specific award, that we maintain that specific award for someone under 19, because people, young people in the city, have also pulled together and also really helped out as well. So so thank you for the report. Thank you for the motion that brought this report forward, and thank you most of all to the people of the city who have done so much amazing work for their fellow citizens and for groups and organisations in the city during the pandemic.
Okay, thank you very much, Matt. We have another person present. Councillor Pitt has rejoined us. Steve, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Darren, and apologies for lateness. I had a doctor's appointment and the previous patient obviously needed a lot of attention and was quite concerning, so I didn't mind waiting, obviously. So apologies for joining late. I've got no declarations of interest, by the way. Important to add that in. Just to add my voice to Matt's, really, I thought he voiced that very well, as did Lee. Very important that we are recognising people, particularly that younger person. I was on the phone to Lou Wilders this morning, and the Hive are stepping up again to support the city at a difficult time, and obviously there's a lot of people in the networks that they reach who've done exemplary work throughout the pandemic. I've seen several businesses email me this morning saying that they're now that they're not able to do what they normally do, they're standing ready to help again. We know that Pompey and the community in particular stepped up and did phenomenal work getting food parcels delivered across the city during the first phase, and I believe they'll be supporting that effort again. So it's great that we're going to be doing this, but we also need to recognise that there are people all the time stepping up to do this important work, and there may be some of those hidden heroes out there who we don't even yet know about as we go through the next couple of months or so. So I think it's important that we thank all of those people who may or may not be nominated for these awards, but for the work they've done so far and the huge contribution they've made to the city. Everyone's pulled together absolutely brilliantly through this pandemic, and we've still got a way to go. But the light at the end of the tunnel, which is the opportunity to recognise some of those outstanding contributions, is very welcome and extremely important. And thank you for your work on preparing this, Lydia. It's much appreciated.
Okay, thank you for that, Steve. So, Steve, the Cabinet nominated me to chair the meeting until you turned up.
I think you're doing a fine job and you should chair the rest of the meeting, Darren. That's fine.
Thank you. Can I have that in writing, please, mate? Thank you very much indeed. Lee, again, before I ask questions and sum up, Lee.
You're on mute.
Lee, you're being muted, sir.
I just want to follow on from what Councillor Pitt said, and welcome Councillor Pitt. He raised the very point that he jogged my memory. We're bound to miss people. We're bound to miss excellent work, commendable work somewhere. And I think that what I want us to be able to say to people is that what we're doing here is saying to Portsmouth, aren't you brilliant? The whole of Portsmouth stepped up. And these awards are kind of indicative of all of that fabulous effort that went on. So that's what I wanted to point out. And if that could be reflected in the meeting, how the whole city stepped up, neighbour upon neighbour and street upon street and all that sort of thing, if it could be reflected somehow like that, that would be amazing. Thanks, Lydia.
Okay, thank you for that, Lee. I then have I'll try. I've got one question for Lydia, and then I'll try and sum up. But I think Lee and Steve, you're right, and I think we may need to add a fifth recommendation to this, which I will propose we do as I go along. If that's all right. Lydia, just one question. The Lord Mayor is happy with all this, isn't he?
Yes, he's very happy.
Okay, that's fine, because civic awards mean a lot to people in this across the city. I mean, I've got people I know in my ward who've received civic awards, and they're amazed they got it because they don't think they're good enough, which is a deep shock to everyone else when they actually have it. So I'm grateful for that, but just want to check because part of it is his gig, not the cabinet's gig. I'm very grateful to colleagues for their comments. The Civic Awards is my idea, I have to say, without wishing to sound too big-headed about it, but I'm going to. And I wanted it because I could see all the posters thanking everybody across the city, thanking our key workers, thanking everybody from the postman to the postie to the dustman to the doctor to the nurse. And it seemed to me that everybody else was thanking people, but not this authority, which remains one of the key cockpits of the city and one of the major organisations in charge of leading the city, and the people supposedly in charge of leading the city should thank people. And that's why I thought the idea of actually having dedicated awards for people is important. So I think the idea of them being independently judged, because what we don't want is a whole bunch of politicians deciding a whole bunch of politicians should be getting these awards, is crucial. And I think Lydia's already got, and the team have already put forward those safeguards in there. I think also in there, Lee, there is the idea that all nominees will receive certificates. Have I got that right, Lydia? Steve is nodding for you, I see.
Yeah.
So which is good. So yeah, and I think, Lee, that might be one way of doing that. I think, Lydia, the only thing that concerns me is, given that we've probably got another 3 months of this lockdown, and Lord knows when this is all going to end, and Lord knows when the annual general meeting is going to be. We hope it's in May, but it may not be at this rate. That we try and make sure that it's all done as close to the AGM as possible, because the last thing we want is maybe some politicians using this for their own benefits. That's the last thing we need, because this is more important than any political activity, and I think that's in the process, but I just want that checked out. I think the only other thing is, I think on that, the other thing I would say is, Matt is right. This city pulls together. This is almost what we do. And I think that's absolutely crucial. It's part of the Pompey way that whenever we face a crisis, we all muck in and we all help each other. Whether it's phoning people to see if they're okay, some of whom have had the virus and are recovering, whether it's going out and collecting people's food, collecting people's prescriptions, where there's fantastic work of the Hive just to make sure that those who are most vulnerable and who are now most vulnerable again are looked after properly. That's what Portsmouth does. But I think it's important not just to say we all muck in, but also that we actually thank people. And we won't thank everyone, but I think providing a certificate for all the nominees enables it not to look elitist. And I think that's absolutely crucial, or to say we're just giving it to our mates, because that's not what I had in mind when I first put this forwards. So what I would suggest, colleagues, is to add a recommendation 5, as that seems to be the only place I can put it, which is that the Cabinet places on record its thanks to all the people of Portsmouth for the fantastic work they have done during the first, second, and third lockdowns. And hope that one day we can all get back to normal again. Or words to that effect, Anna.
Yeah.
Does that sound? Does anyone have a problem with all that? Speak now, forever hold your peace. Grief, I'm getting no's. People agreeing. This is good. I like this. So we'll add that as a recommendation 5, if that's all right, Anna. So I think it's important we have to thank everyone.
Yeah, we'll put that in the minutes and add it to the report.
Lovely.
Decision.
That's excellent. Lydia, thank you so much. I look forward to seeing the awards. I still think it's a great idea, and I'm glad it's being enacted in such a magnificent way. So, Lydia, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
And thanks to all the team as well. Okay, item 6, please, colleagues. Now, is this Charlotte?
This will be David.
Oh, David, excellent, excellent.
If I've got the right item.
It's the City Vision, so I hope we have. It's
Yeah,
the
that's
only item left, Mr. Chief Executive.
absolutely right, Chairman. And it follows on nicely, actually, from hearing so much about how this city pulls together. This report brings to you the culmination of just over a year's work, actually, with partners, with residents, with employers, right across the city in terms of drawing together the city, and I say that rather than the council's views about what sort of city we want to see, what sort of city we want to be, and this has all been under the umbrella of the work that we've done under Imagine Portsmouth 2040. So, we've seen through the COVID response how the city pulls together, but it's also really valuable for all of our partners and ourselves if we can identify common aspirations and common purposes that the city can really get behind. And that has been the purpose of this piece of work, which the City Council has facilitated, but we've also been one of many, many participants. So the output, whilst we've had our involvement in shaping it, it's not our output. It's the output of all of those couple of thousand direct participants, actually, through the whole process. And I think that's what gives it real value and real strength. It might also mean that it's not always going to be couched in exactly the terms that you would prefer, because it's not an individual's product. It's a huge piece of work from a lot of different voices. And the qualitative and quantitative research that has gone into that is set out for you in the paper. You can see we've had nearly 2,000 respondents. We had 20 focus groups. We had a conference way back in March with over 90 participants. And I think we had nearly 900 people wishing to engage in that piece of work. So we really have had phenomenal engagement from the city. And that work has been taken forward by a partnership board, which we have been involved in, which has had representation from many, many agencies and organisations across the city. And I would just like to say what commitment we've had from those representatives on that partnership board, because the process we've been through, it hasn't been easy, but it has been really uplifting. So we've had real contribution there. And I think what you'll see in Appendix A, which gives the wording of the final vision and so forth there, you'll see that a lot of that is values driven. It's not about what we should build or what we should, create. It's about the spirit of the city and what we want our city to be like. And I hope that this work will act as a touchstone for ourselves as an organisation, and also all those other organisations across the city. And the discussions really did reflect both the passion and the compassion of this city, and I'm really pleased with that. So I recommend it to you, members. I think we should find a way of putting this before the full council. I think it would be great to get full council endorsement for it. I'd particularly like to put on record my thanks to all the participants, because without them we would not have this quality and depth of product. And I'd also just like to highlight the work that's been undertaken on this journey by Kelly Nash and Charlotte Smith, and also the huge support that we've had and drive we've had from this on behalf of the political side of the council from Councillor Steve Pitt. So I certainly recommend it to you. I hope you feel that you can endorse it, and I am very happy to seek a way of brokering this across the full council. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, David. In summing up, I may have a couple of suggestions to try and enforce that. But firstly, I've got comments from colleagues, and I start. Sorry, I've made a note of everybody. I start with Susie. Councillor Horton.
Thank you, and thank you, David. And I just want to start by saying it is a really, really good aspirational document, and I completely endorse it. I've said this before, but I want to reiterate it. I don't want it to become something that was a really nice project and then doesn't become embedded in moving things forward. I think the council, in a way, was the host of the actual consultation. In the same way that we set up Portsmouth Education Partnership, you have to be the person leading it in order to hand it over. But it's how you hand it over so it becomes equal with all the partnership members of the partnership. That's the trick, because you're the person who started it off. Sometimes that takes a bit of time, and actually I think it works when there's a constant, almost like a pledge by all the partners that they will constantly make reference back to what they all agreed. And it's going to be how that becomes part of the culture that will make it go from something that's aspirational and values driven, so that those values are always there, even when it comes down to the pragmatic. So I think it's really good. I, again, would thank everyone for engaging with it. Sometimes these things are just enjoyable in and of themselves, but actually for us as one of those partners, the best thing that could come out of it is in years to come, people are also still referring to the city vision as it organically evolves. So yes, my full support, and thank you to everyone.
Thank you for that, Susie. Before I go to Lee, David and Charlotte, is there some sort of feedback mechanism that Susie was, along the lines of what Susie was suggesting, already embedded, or is that something that you'll be looking at as we go forwards?
Sorry, Darren, I'm going to jump back in there.
Well,
I don't think...
Was I being overly formal?
Yeah, no, I think that's my point, is we don't want the council to be constantly micromanaging it, otherwise it won't achieve what it's meant to be doing. So the feedback mechanism needs to, in a way, be a commitment to the principles of it, the values in it, and actually all the partners need to make that pledge that they will reference it so that it becomes part and parcel of everything. If the council gets to a point where it's organising a feedback mechanism, then already you've lost the spirit of it.
Thank you, Susie. I accept my verbal infelicitations. I was actually thinking of a feedback mechanism to the partners, which is what Susie was talking about, to try and make sure that they've got commitments and they've got pledges. And
if I can help, I mean, we on behalf of the council made a pledge that we would bring this to you for your endorsement, and other organisations and representatives are doing similarly. And we will be held account by those other partners for our response to this. But we don't want to create a huge number of key performance indicators and so on and so forth. This is really much more about the spirit of the city and the way in which the city wants to shape its own future.
That's good. I'm delighted there's no key performance indicators in there. That's absolutely superb as far as I can see. Lee?
Yeah, I think it's a great document. And in this council, when we do these documents, they don't go up on the shelf. They really don't. I've mentioned many times before the seafront strategy, the work we're doing around Victoria Park, a big consultation exercise going on there. And we act on these reports, which is why I think that the spirit of the community, of the city, a city of interdependent communities, is thriving. And we're all part of that too. So the chief executive is quite correct. And it is fantastic that the direction of travel that we are on as a city, as a council, as an administration, is reflected in the groups, what they told us when they fed back to the council. So we share, because we're part of that spirit, because we are all in those communities, because we all live here, we beat that Pompey thing, don't we? And we understand it, which is why we are moving in the right direction altogether. So when we talk about culture and creativity, We see all the fantastic things that have gone on and will continue to build on. We started out with the D-Day Museum. Not so long back, it was actually quite a small museum, and it was, I think, it needed to expand. It needed to be that world-class destination that it now is, together with the landing craft that's come recently and the money that's been put into it by massively successful bids from our officers. Do not underestimate the worth that our officers are. They are worth their weight in gold. And some people moan about what we do, and some people moan about officers, but they have, despite the money that's come into this council, which we depend on from the government, they have levered in, I mean, if you added it all up, it would be phenomenal, huge numbers of pounds into our city. And that is helping us to move in the direction of travel that people want us to go, reflected in this report. And when we talk about this, we have to remember there's so much happens in this city. It's quite incredible. Just before Christmas, we learned that Portsmouth, we knew it because we see it all around, all these small businesses. Portsmouth was the most entrepreneurial city in the United Kingdom, according to one report, which we knew because we see all these small businesses that the council supports and moves forward. And when there's green, we've seen we've seen this fantastic progressive report today. The council has been, for over a decade, has been moving forward on the green agenda, and all the tremendous work and the fantastic work that Susie's done, linking into schools and gaining the confidence of schools. And so we see, despite what's going on, happiness around that. And the easy travel, that is not so easy to deliver because we have the car lobby, but the car lobby also beginning to understand how we must move forward with this visioning. And we must remind ourselves too that I think 25,000 people engaged in consultations with the council over the last year or so, which is absolutely tremendous. And because we do all of these things, I think we gain the confidence of our city. And we have confidence in them. We have every faith in Portsmouth. And this vision, it is a vision, a direction of travel, is going to take us even further forward to do even more tremendous things than we have been doing already. And we have to thank our officers and the people of Portsmouth for doing all these things. And also give ourselves a pat on the back too. And all of our colleagues in the council. Thank you.
Not at all, Lee. Thank you. Thank you very much. Hugh.
Thank you. I think it's a remarkably comprehensive document in a very short space. So I think it is very good. And where do we take it from here? I think the first thing we need to do is to achieve maximum publicity in all sectors of our city life. Because if people don't know about this, they won't be able to work towards the vision. And so we've really got to publicise this, not just in flagship, not just on the odd poster here and there, but publicise this as widely as possible throughout all sectors of our city. And if we do that, then we stand a reasonable chance of actually getting there.
I think that's a very fair point, Hugh. And I think that may be one for David, for Charlotte, and for Steve to look at as we trundle along. But no, I mean, it's a vision for the whole city, not just an authority or a political party. And I think it's important as many people know as possible. So thank you for that, Hugh. Steve.
Thank you, Darren. And thanks very much to Charlotte and David in particular for all their huge amount of work and time that they've given to this project over the last months. It's been quite a journey, but actually a very fulfilling one. And actually seeing the reactions that we've had from all different types of people across our communities, particularly I recall being with David and Charlotte, along with Pam, who brilliantly facilitated the conference event that we had just before lockdown started back in March. And actually, a lot of people always say, well, it's the usual suspects that turn up and feed into these things, and it's only a small group of people that have their say. But a lot of work was put into picking a real cross-section and representative sample of the city for that event, and it really was diverse. I mean, I've been around on the council since 2016, but going back to 2008, when the leader of the council actually invited me to get involved at that point when we were developing the last vision for Portsmouth, and that's why I'm sat here today, because he said, I told him the draft that he'd done was rubbish, and he said, I agree with you, and if you can do it better, you do it, which is very Gerald, if anybody doesn't know him as well as we all do, and he's always open to those approaches. And I sat in his office with Paul Edmondson-Jones, who was then the head of the LSP, and Paddy May, who still leads our strategy unit, and that's how that original vision document started. And when you go back to that and you look at that process, it was very similar. We had a big conference event at Fratton Park in the Victory Suite up there with about 150 people turning up, and these are not the usual suspects at all. These are your next door neighbours, our next door neighbours, people who are just genuinely interested and passionate about the community. And to see how all the major stakeholders in the city have then stepped up and taken ownership of that and fed into that, not trying to overwrite what the members of the public and our communities have said, but to embrace it and enhance it and try to find even more depth and value in that. And I think that this exercise has been incredibly valuable for those reasons, but it's a living document. It's not something that really sits very well on paper. It's all about actions, and it's about how we embed that. And when I was really enthused when I attended the last partnership meeting to hear senior police officers talking about going back and discussing with their organisation how they can start to embed the vision behind how they're operating in the city. The Hive have been part of those meetings and they're passionate about it. The university have been part of it. The National Health Local NHS Trust have been involved with it. Mark Hubban's been involved in these conversations. So this is not something that's been a small select group of people. It's reached far and wide. And as it's very important to mention, as David did at the outset, that this is not the council's vision. This is the city's vision, and the council, as a partner within the city, will be responsible for delivering it. So this is actually a great responsibility to take this on and show that we are committed to it, and that it's not party political in any way, shape or form, because the whole process has been largely exclusive of politicians, which is to be hugely welcomed. And I think that's been its greatest strength, is that everyone else has spoken and this is what they've said. You can't decide where the journey is going to end until you know what the destination point is, and this is the destination point for us that we now know we're all aiming to across all sectors and partners within the city, and equally for the city council. So everything that we develop from here on in, everything that we already have as a strategy or a policy, we need to be looking at those and reviewing them and saying, how do they align to the vision for Portsmouth for 2040, and where are the stops along the way to get us to that end point of the journey? So it's exciting, it's great, it's a very positive document. It also draws out some of the great strengths of our city and how strong we are as a community and how great we are when we do all pull together in the same direction. I know we all have our arguments, not least amongst the political parties, but I think you can always say that it doesn't matter what somebody's motivation is, why they get into politics or why they lead voluntary sector organisations or why they head up major educational institutions or why they work for the NHS. They're passionate about working for communities in the way that they believe that should happen. So what this does is gives us a blueprint that we can all sign up to. So the policies may change a bit along the way depending on who's running things in different organisations, but the aspiration of the end destination remains the same, and that's what's so valuable about it. So thanks again for all the work. Thanks to all of those partners that took part and added so much value to it. And ironically, in 2008, when we completed that vision, we were entering a world economic crisis, and now we're doing one in the middle of a pandemic. So I do make a commitment to the city never to suggest ever again that we do a vision document, because it's obviously got certain baggage with it we might not want. But we got 20 years to live with this one, and I think that's good enough. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for that. I'm not sure we can put that in as a recommendation not to do it in the middle of a pandemic, but I think that's a very good idea. Now, because it's Lee, I'm being very nice. So Lee, again.
Yeah. So this is directed at David Williams. I know he's thanked them, but over the Christmas period, there was an explosion in a house at Whale Island Way, and our staff and the Red Cross and the emergency services responded magnificently, not only to look after that one family, but the families either side, I know, and my understanding from a report back from David and Joe this morning, and he's thanked Joe in particular and all of her teams, Joe Bennett, is that their families are being supported and being rehoused, and they are being looked after by us and their families and friends in the community. So I have thanked him in an email, but I'm sure the Cabinet and the whole Council would want to thank everybody for doing that over the Christmas period, which is a hard time for it to happen. So thank you to them, and thank you, David, etc. And thank you for you passing our thanks.
That's very kind of you, Lee. Thank you, Anna. I don't think we can put that in a recommendation, but I would be incredibly grateful if those thanks could be noted as part of the minutes.
Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah.
That's excellent. I've got no one else to say anything else, so I'll try and sum up. I think when Liberal Democrats resumed control of Portsmouth in 2018, we had two key things we wanted to learn from the past. The first was the need to tackle the many long-term issues that the city faces. Everything from our roads being too clogged, our air being too dirty, not enough homes people could live in, trying to improve the social mobility within the city, trying to improve people's educational chances, trying to look after our senior citizens and the vulnerable. That was the first thing, and we've moved on that. And the second thing was also to say that actually we can't do everything. The things that Liberal Democrats believe in is about empowering communities, not the state telling you what to do or you being left to yourself, but to encourage people to develop their own area, their own way of life. And that means empowering communities, and it means believing that this city is bigger than any of us, and this city is bigger than this council, and this city is bigger than any bunch of politicians, as Steve said more articulately than I can earlier on. And this vision fits entirely within that. I'm delighted that it's not been devised in a smoke-filled room smoke-less room now by a bunch of politicians, but it's actually been devised by normal people. This is hugely helpful, because if we're to embed this city embed this vision as Susie outlined earlier on, it has to come from the bottom up. It can't come from the top down. So how this is embedded is something I think we'd all be very interested to see, but it's a way in which we can empower our city to do better. We all want the city to do better, because we believe the city's best days are not behind us, but there are great days ahead once we can return to something approaching normal as soon as someone can tell us when that is. I think the city vision is an amazing document and an inspirational way forwards. So thank you to all the participants. And Anna, following on from what David said earlier, I want to propose to Cabinet some extra suggestions, if I may.
Yes.
Now, sorry, I keep reading the reports on my tablet, which is to my left, right as it is on the screen, which is why I keep looking at it. So under the recommendations, I would like to say this, which is that we recommend that Cabinet formally adopt the new vision for Portsmouth in 2040, thanks all the participants in the city vision process for their hard work and excellent document, and requests that full council considers this document at the earliest opportunity. Is that consistent with what you were after, David?
Yes, certainly. That's very helpful, and I think between now and the full council meeting, we can talk to the group leaders about that.
Yeah, I mean there are ways in which we could do it. I'm happy to sort of see all member briefings and all that sort of stuff, but that's well above my pay grade, and is something for the group leaders to resolve. But I think all councillors should be involved in that process and understand what this is, because many of us haven't been involved, even though it's a fantastic document. Cabinet colleagues, are you okay with those minor tweaks to the recommendations? Steve is all right?
Yeah.
Yeah, lovely, excellent. So with that. That is the final item on the agenda. So Anna and Peter, the meeting is therefore closed at 26 minutes past 1.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks, Claire. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.